In the quiet town of Stillwater, nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, life moved slowly. The Stillwater River, the town's lifeblood, flowed through the center, providing sustenance and a place of recreation. But when Clara Walker, a young woman beloved by all, disappeared without a trace, the town's tranquility was shattered. She had last been seen near the river, and her disappearance was only the beginning of the dark secrets that would soon surface. The entire town mobilized to search for Clara. Volunteers combed the woods, divers scoured the river, but no sign of her was found. Her disappearance became an obsession for Sheriff Tom Rivers, a man haunted by his own demons. As he delved deeper into Clara's life, he discovered a series of mysterious events linked to the river, stories of people who had gone missing, strange lights seen at night, and whispers of a dark presence lurking beneath the water's surface. As the search continued, a stranger arrived in Stillwater. Dressed in dark clothes, with a cold and distant demeanor, he claimed to be a historian researching the town's history. But his presence made the townsfolk uneasy. He was often seen by the river at night, staring into the water as if searching for something or someone. Sheriff Rivers began to suspect that this stranger knew more about Clara's disappearance than he was letting on. Sheriff Rivers visited the town's oldest resident, Mrs. Abigail Perkins, who had lived in Stillwater her entire life. She spoke of an old legend, passed down through generations, about a curse placed on the river by a vengeful spirit. The legend told of a young woman who had drowned in the river many years ago, betrayed by her lover. In her dying breath, she cursed the river, vowing to drag any unfaithful soul into its depths. Rivers dismissed it as folklore, but the story lingered in his mind. One night, Sheriff Rivers received an anonymous tip, a note left on his desk with a single word: currents. Following the cryptic clue, Rivers discovered a hidden underwater cave beneath the river's surface. The entrance was small and nearly invisible, but as he swam inside, he found something chilling, a bracelet that belonged to Clara. This discovery only deepened the mystery and his resolve to uncover the truth. As Sheriff Rivers continued his investigation, he uncovered evidence of a secret society that had existed in Stillwater for centuries. They worshipped an ancient river deity, believed to grant power and wealth to those who offered human sacrifices. Rivers realized that Clara's disappearance was not random. It was part of a dark ritual to appease the vengeful spirit that haunted the river. The stranger in town, who had been watching Rivers closely, was a member of this cult. Sheriff Rivers began to experience terrifying visions, apparitions of Clara, dripping wet, her eyes pleading for help. The river itself seemed to come alive, with eerie whispers echoing through the night. The more Rivers uncovered, the more he felt the presence of something evil, watching his every move. It became clear that the river was not just a place of water and life, but a gateway to something far more sinister. Determined to find Clara and put an end to the terror, Sheriff Rivers confronted the stranger. A tense confrontation ensued, revealing the stranger's true identity as the leader of the secret society. He confessed to the dark rituals performed by the cult, admitting that Clara was the latest in a long line of sacrifices. But before Rivers could act, the stranger fled into the night, disappearing into the shadows of the river. Sheriff Rivers knew he had to descend into the depths of the river to save Clara if she was still alive. With the help of a local diver, he prepared for the dangerous journey into the underwater cave. As he descended into the cold, dark waters, the weight of the river pressed down on him, and the darkness seemed to swallow him whole. Inside the cave, he found evidence of the ritual: a stone altar, ancient symbols carved into the walls, and the bodies of previous victims eerily preserved. At the heart of the cave, Rivers found Clara, alive but weak, chained to the altar. The stranger was there, ready to complete the ritual. But something unexpected happened. Clara's spirit had become entwined with the vengeful spirit of the river. As the ritual began, the river's currents grew stronger, pulling everyone toward the dark abyss. In a desperate act, Rivers destroyed the altar, breaking the curse and freeing Clara. The river, now enraged, claimed the stranger, dragging him into its depths. Clara was rescued, but the town of Stillwater was forever changed. The river, once a source of life, had become a place of fear and death. The secret society dissolved, its members fleeing or disappearing under mysterious circumstances. Sheriff Rivers, now a hero, struggled to come to terms with what he had witnessed. The haunting vision subsided, but the memory of the river's dark secret lingered in his mind. Years later, Stillwater had returned to its quiet, peaceful state, but the river remained an ominous presence. Sheriff Rivers, now an old man, found himself drawn back to the river one last time. As he stood on the river bank, staring into the water, he heard a familiar whisper Clara's voice, calling him back. The river's secret was never truly revealed, and its dark power continued to flow beneath the surface, waiting for its next victim. This story unfolds over 20 chapters, with each chapter exploring the mystery of the river and the dark secrets it holds. The tension and horror build as Sheriff Rivers uncovers the truth, leading to a terrifying and suspenseful climax. The story combines elements of supernatural horror with psychological tension, making it a gripping tale for your audience. As Emma and Detective Collins stared at the old map of the river, a chill ran down their spines. The whispers had returned, but this time, they weren't just in Emma's mind. The detective could hear them faint, indistinguishable voices murmuring from the depths of the river. "Do you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Collins nodded, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun, as if it could protect them from the unseen. It's as if the river itself is speaking. They followed the map's guidance to an area known as the Bend, a sharp curve in the river where the water swirled ominously. The map indicated that something significant was buried here, beneath the churning waters. As they approached, the whispers grew louder, almost as if pleading for release. Emma kneeled by the river bank, her hand hovering over the surface. The water seemed to react to her presence, the ripples forming words, shapes, faces. Horrified, she pulled back, but the whispers only grew more insistent. "There's something here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something ancient." Collins looked at her, his face pale. "We need to find out what it is. But we must be careful, there's no telling what we might unleash." Back at the library, Emma delved into the town's dark history, discovering references to an ancient ritual performed by the river's original inhabitants. The ritual was meant to seal away a malevolent spirit that had claimed countless lives. The whispers were the voices of the dead, trapped and tormented by this spirit. "There's a way to free them," Emma said, her eyes wide with realization. "But it requires a sacrifice, one of us." Collins' eyes narrowed. "You're not seriously considering this, are you?" "I have to," Emma insisted. "It's the only way to end this curse." But as she spoke, the whispers turned into screams, a cacophony of voices urging her to stop, to reconsider. The river's dark power had seeped into the town, infecting the people with fear and madness. The air was thick with dread, and every shadow seemed to pulse with malevolence. As the full moon rose over the river, Emma and Collins prepared for the ritual. They gathered the necessary items: a knife, candles, and an ancient book of incantations. The atmosphere was charged with tension, the river's whispers now a deafening roar. "Are you sure about this?" Collins asked, his voice shaky. Emma nodded, though fear gripped her heart. "It's the only way." They began the ritual, chanting the ancient words as the river seemed to come alive, its waters thrashing violently. The ground trembled, and the sky darkened as if the very elements were conspiring against them. As the ritual reached its climax, Emma took the knife, her hand trembling. But just as she was about to make the final cut, a figure emerged from the shadows, a ghostly apparition, its face twisted in agony. "Stop," the spirit cried. "You do not understand." The apparition was that of a woman, her ethereal form flickering like a dying flame. She was one of the original inhabitants, a victim of the ancient spirit. Through sobs, she explained that the spirit was not the only malevolent force. The ritual was a trap intended to unleash something far worse upon the world. "It wants you to complete the ritual," the spirit warned. "But if you do, you will doom us all." Emma hesitated, the knife still in her hand. The whispers had turned into a frantic chorus, urging her to continue. But the spirit's words filled her with doubt. "What should I do?" Emma asked, her voice breaking. "You must find another way," the spirit pleaded. "There is a place hidden beneath the river, a tomb, where the true source of this curse lies. Destroy it, and the river will be cleansed." With the spirit's guidance, Emma and Collins located a hidden entrance near the bend, leading down into a forgotten tomb. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the walls were slick with moisture. The deeper they went, the louder the whispers became, now a torrent of voices screaming for release. The tomb was a labyrinth of tunnels, each more treacherous than the last. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, glowing faintly in the darkness. Emma could feel the malevolent presence growing stronger with each step. "We're close," she whispered, clutching Colin's arm for support. Finally, they reached a chamber at the heart of the tomb. In the center was a stone sarcophagus, its lid sealed with ancient runes. The whispers were deafening now, an overwhelming force that threatened to drive them mad. "This is it," Colin said, his voice barely audible over the din. Emma nodded, her heart pounding. She knew what had to be done. Emma nodded, her heart pounding. She knew what had to be done. With trembling hands, Emma placed the knife against the sarcophagus seal and began to recite the incantation from the ancient book. As she did, the runes began to glow brighter, and the lid of the sarcophagus slowly lifted. A wave of darkness erupted from within, and the temperature plummeted. The malevolent spirit, a twisted figure of pure malice, emerged, its eyes burning with hatred. "You dared defy me," the spirit hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. Emma stood her ground, though fear gripped her heart. "Your reign of terror ends here." The spirit lunged at her, but Colin stepped forward, brandishing the talisman he had found in the tomb. The spirit recoiled, its form flickering as if struggling to maintain its shape. "Now, Emma," Colin shouted ... With a surge of adrenaline, Emma plunged the knife into the spirit's chest. The creature let out a deafening scream, its form disintegrating into a cloud of black smoke. The whispers ceased and the air grew still. The tomb began to collapse as the spirit was vanquished. Emma and Collins raced back through the labyrinth, barely escaping as the walls crumbled around them. They emerged into the night, gasping for breath as the ground swallowed the tomb whole. The river was calm once more, its waters clear and still. The malevolent presence had been eradicated and the whispers were gone. But the cost had been high. The town was in ruins, its people scarred by the ordeal. As they stood by the river bank, Emma felt a strange sense of peace. The nightmare was over, but the memories would haunt her forever. "We did it," Colin said, though his voice was tinged with sadness. Emma nodded, but the victory felt hollow. There was no celebration, no relief, only the lingering sense of loss. In the weeks that followed, the town slowly began to rebuild. The river, once a source of fear and despair, was now a place of remembrance. A monument was erected at the bend, honoring the lives lost and the sacrifices made to end the curse. But Emma knew that the story was far from over. The spirit had been defeated, but the darkness it left behind would never truly vanish. It would linger in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. And so, as the town moved on, Emma found herself drawn back to the river. She would often visit the monument, listening to the faint echoes of the past, a reminder that some secrets are better left undisturbed. The river had its peace, but it would never forget the blood that had been spilled in its name.